Marcy Farrow from ThankfulHomemaker.com, and I'm so glad to get a few moments of your day. We have a fun episode today. It's talking about another one of my favorite topics of the 150 zillion of them, but simple tips to reading more books. And I was going to title it for busy moms or busy homemakers, and I just settled on with simple tips to read more books. So we all know that the books that we read, they shape us, they grow us, right? I personally have been challenged by books, taught by books, comforted by books that over my years of reading, and even as a young girl being read to. I can still have memories of my grandmother or my mom reading to me. I can still pick up a book and read to my grandbabies that I read to my children when they were little and be taken back to those days sitting with my babies, getting lost in the story. And I love that. I can hear in those memories the giggles or the surprise or the sadness, depending on the story. In the voices of my kids, I can still hear that in my head. And it's been really fun for me to make new memories with my grandkiddos and possibly one day, Lord willing, my great-grandchildren. So just as we've kind of turned the calendar here, we thought about our Bible reading plan for the year, right? If you've not given a watch yet to developing a daily Bible reading habit, I'm not sure I have the title right, but if you've not given a watch to that or you're not in a good Bible reading plan, give that one a peek if you get a moment. But I also know a lot of us are thinking about what books are going to be on our nightstand and in our cars and in our suitcases and on our kitchen counters and in our purses and on our bookshelves for 2021. So I have a quote here from Jane Austen I want to start us off with. I love this. She said, "I declare, after all, there is no enjoyment like reading. How much sooner one tires of anything than of a book. When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." End quote there. So a couple of years ago for Christmas, my daughter gave me a copy of Sarah Clarkson's book. It was called Book Girl. And I know there are a lot of free reading challenges out there online. I think of Tim Challies usually has one that he puts out every year. And his will be a little more Christian focused too. And then there's Modern Mrs. Darcy, which she would have more New York Times bestsellers and more recommendations, probably not so much of a spiritual nature. For your kids, there's Read Aloud Revival by Sarah Mackenzie, and I honestly don't know her theological background either. So always be discerning when I'm saying this to you. Check them out. There's some great ideas and suggestions, but again, be discerning. And as I'm coming back to this, I really liked the suggestions in Sarah Clarkson's book. They were very simple. She didn't give a specific list, but as I worked through her book, it helped me put together a personalized list for me and my specific interests or areas that I'd like to see growth in. And so now I have this ever-growing list, right, of books. So how do I get through some of it or all the books on it, which I probably never will. And as I'm saying this too, always our Bibles are our top priority in our reading time each day over all the other books. We need to start there first. I'm probably going to say that a few more times, so bear with me on that. It's just a reminder I want to stick with. So I do want to share, though, that in my walk as a believer, I've really been discipled through Christian books. I've shared this in previous podcasts, and this being discipled through books, it cannot replace the real one-to-one discipleship with one another, in-person discipleship. That's biblical. But I am going to say that books have been a huge part of my growth as a believer. I've shared with how I've been discipled, well, sometimes, discipled by Elizabeth Elliot through her books, but also I think here at Jerry Bridges, J.I. Packer, John MacArthur, Alistair Begg, Susan Hunt, David Powlison, Charles Spurgeon. The list can go on and on if I would just look at my shelves and stuff behind me. So reading good books is also another way to grow in our knowledge of the Lord and, utilize and glean from that wisdom from those who have walked the walk before us. So I'm just going to share with you some tips today. These are not exhaustive. Some of you probably have tons more ideas, and I would love you to share those with me in the comments of the video. Just any other tips as I'm working through here that come to your mind that you do or have helped you. So I'm just sharing some that have helped me over the years. First off is to find books that interest you. This is a big one. Find books that you love to read. Reading books you enjoy is a start to reading more. If you're just reading books you're not enjoying, it's going to be really hard to push through, right? This starting with books that you are enjoying will help you if you've not developed a regular reading habit already, or maybe you're just finding yourself in a slump. I mean, that could be. I've been there. And when I start, if I'm kind of in a reading slump and I pick up a book that I'm really enjoying, it's a help getting me back on track. I've enjoyed Goodreads. It's been a help for me. I kind of follow like-minded readers. That's where I find a lot of, especially because my theological books, I find a lot online, but I like to read some fiction too, some historical fiction. That's been a good place for me to find some recommendations from friends. Also, even some of my nonfiction books to get some good recommendations. One way to do this too is to ask friends in your church family what they're reading. I've stated earlier about Tim Challies, but he is probably my top place online to find good, solid theological resources to read. I also get various ideas from podcasts I listen to. And sometimes I really like hearing the author speak on a podcast to know a little bit more about them before I maybe pick up their book to read. I used to be part of the Book of the Month Club, and I did this with my son. And I honestly was very surprised how much I enjoyed the various books that I would have never found or chosen on my own. I wouldn't have even come across them. I like that you could skip a month. That was easy to do. And if I read fiction, my bent is usually historical fiction. My son picked up different genres than I did, so we could switch books sometimes after we finished them, which was kind of nice. So, and then when I did that, another way to find books I liked is to search for similar books. So an example was I read a book called All the Light We Cannot See, and I really enjoyed it. And then I just searched books similar to All the Light We Cannot See, and I found Beneath a Scarlet Sky, which was another excellent read, both historical fiction. So, and then the reviews and ratings on Amazon and Goodreads are really helpful in choosing. I mean, if I'm looking at a book and it's got all 2 stars, I'm probably not going to pick up that book. So again, as believers, the Bible needs to be the book we prioritize daily to read and study over all others. But it's not wrong to read other books and other categories. I'm saying this for myself. I don't feel the need to read just Christian books. I like to open up my genre and read a little bit more. So just want to say that. But I just want to say that we need to make sure that God's word is getting first place in our lives. Another rule that has helped me that I've kind of made for myself is to put aside a book I'm struggling with. Do not be afraid to quit, or maybe just put down that book for a bit you're struggling with. There's books that I start that I just get a sense that I just don't want to waste my time on. And those I just quit. There's others that I do want to read, but maybe, I don't even know, maybe it's a difficult read. Maybe I'm having a hard time getting into it, or it's not a good season. So sometimes I'll put it down and keep it there, and I'll pick it back up at another time. I know sometimes some of the classics can be hard, but they are worth the effort to take time to work through, because as you dig in there and you start getting comfortable with the language of the story, it becomes easier and easier to read the further you go into the book. You just need to do it, basically. So if you are finding it difficult to push through it, set it aside, come back with a fresh mind. If it's just not good, or you're not seeing any benefit to it, don't feel like you have to read it. You don't have to do that. There's also another incentive to read, especially if you have children. Studies show that parents who read raise kids who read books. And I know this is not always the case. It's not like this 100% proof, but I'm just saying, read, mama. Let your kids see you reading books. C.S. Lewis said, a children's story that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's story in the slightest. And I can attest to this. You can enjoy reading books geared for young adults, or some of your kids' books. I've been kind of rereading with my grandkids the Little House on the Prairie series, and it reminds me how much I love them and I enjoy them still. So I don't need to feel like I have to have grandkids to go back and read some of those old favorites like the Caddy Woodlawns, or some of those stories that I really enjoyed reading when my kids were reading them when they were young. Another good tip to read more is to keep books handy. Don't leave home without a book. Keep a book in the car, in your purse. I should have brought it here. I have a Kindle Paperwhite, and they're pretty small, and it's really compact, so it's easy for me to just kind of toss in my purse when I'm out running errands. So if I find myself waiting at a doctor's office or getting the car repaired or the oil changed or something, or I'm waiting on a friend, at a coffee shop who's running a little late or something, I'm always good to get that extra time to find some pages to read. Actually, I kind of laugh because there was this meme going around, and it was somebody was like sitting in the car and they were going to wait for somebody. And I do this a lot for my husband when we travel for work. When he goes into plants for his appointments, I'm always sitting in the car, and he's like, "You're good?" And it's kind of like me. I'm like, going, "I have a book. I'm good. I have a book." I'm so happy to get that time to read, and I'm sure you would feel the same way. So keep a book by your nightstand. Keep a book in any places you may find yourself sitting during the day. Can I say the bathroom? That's okay. In the kitchen. I find myself reading sometimes when I'm cooking dinner, and that sounds really odd, but maybe I have something on the stove, like a pot I have to watch. So I've learned to just kind of have a book in hand and read while I'm waiting for that pot to boil, and hopefully I don't miss it. And sometimes I do, and that pot boils over, but usually I'm pretty good at grabbing it. So a man named Mortimer J. Adler, who most of you have probably heard of, he wrote a book called How to Read a Book. He said, in the case of good books, the point is not to see how many of them you can get through, but rather how many can get through to you. I really like that quote. It's not about the quantity that you can get through in a year, friend, but how you are growing and being stretched in your reading. So take your time with that. Another area that has helped me to read more books is I make good use of the Kindle app. We all want to spend less time on social media, right? So you can even on your phone, if that's an issue, you can replace your social media apps and just pop that Kindle app on there. It's free. When you find yourself looking at your phone to scroll the Facebook or Instagram feed, stop. If you took them off, you wouldn't be doing that. But if you still have them on there, stop, open the Kindle app instead and have a book or two already downloaded on it, ready to go. We always have our phones with us. And with the Kindle app, you can always have a book handy to read. I like to keep on mine. I'll keep sometimes just a good devotional book, something that's a little shorter to read or an easier read. So that way when I find myself with a few minutes on hand to wait, I have something there to look at. There's also it's called the Libby app. I think it's from Overdrive. It's an option to read books from your library, your local library, and it's free. So I've not checked it all out yet, but I want to. After I was putting this together, I'm like, I got to go check that out because it may replace my Kindle app on my phone down the road. But some of you probably already know about it, but check it out. Just Google the Libby app and it should come up. One of my favorite features, though, with the Kindle app, especially because when I'm doing writing and quoting, or I'm like even for podcast episodes, if I'm quoting from a book and I'm looking for a quote that I highlighted in a book, that Kindle app has been most excellent for me. I can find them very quickly. And I have a setup that I put together. I use an app called Readwise, and it connects with this software I use called Roam on my computer. And Roam has become like a Google search for my life, but Roam and Readwise connect. So every time I highlight books in Kindle, that Readwise app puts it into my Roam for me. So when I search that book, like as I'm putting this podcast together, I'm reading Feelings and Faith by Brian Borgman, and I'm reading it on my Kindle app. Every time I highlight a quote for that day, it shows up on the day for my Roam app, and it shows it there. And then if I want to search that book for all the quotes I highlighted in that Roam app, because it's connected with Readwise, I just put in Feelings and Faith, and they all pop up there, and I can search through them. Super helpful for me. I love that I can highlight a quote and I know it's going to be saved. So that's a help in the work that I do here, but just in general, sometimes wanting to go back and find a quote, and I know I can find it, and I love being able to do that. Another tip that has been huge for me is to utilize audiobooks. Audiobooks are such an easy way to get books in while you're folding laundry, cooking dinner, doing dishes, exercising, taking a walk, getting ready in the morning, showering, driving. Audiobooks are a most excellent invention. And with our phones, it has so simplified it. I think when we do audiobooks with our kids, that's like a double win. When you're on vacation, so good. Sometimes, did you ever find yourself arriving at your destination and you're sitting in the car and the audiobook is like at the end or at a good place and you don't want to get out of the car because you want to hear the rest of it? So I use Audible and Christian Audio for my that's a lot of audio, for my audiobooks. Christian Audio also has a free book every month to download for free. Sometimes they're not so good. Sometimes there's some good ones in there. So you got to kind of pick and choose that. And also, as we were talking about quotes in Kindle, if I hear a good quote on my Audible or my Christian audiobook, what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot of my phone of that area so I can see where I was and I can go back and find it easily. Audible also has a feature that you can hit it and put a note in and save that spot. So there's just some good things in there to be able to do that. Because I know sometimes you hear a really good quote and you're not in a place to write it down. Sometimes I so enjoy the book when I'm listening to the audiobook that I get the hardcover book, or I might get it on Kindle, because Kindle has a feature. It's not on all books, but it's on a pretty good amount of books, called Whisper Sync. And then the Kindle app will sync with your Audible book through Amazon there. So you can go back and forth between the Audible book and the Kindle, and it saves your spot. I hope that all made sense there. That's kind of handy sometimes. There's other great resources there. I'm just so already hooked into Kindle. I have so many books already. I don't know what to do with that. But there's other good resources. One is called, to get free books, one is called Project Gutenberg. And again, we talked about that Libby apps to borrow and read books. Your local library is a great resource to do that. So one other resource I came across when I was putting this together was called audiobooks.com. I've not utilized that, but that may be another great option too. It looks like they have some free books for you if you sign up too. So another one is keep a book list, and it's great for motivation, because when you have that list of books that you want to read or read next, whether you write this in a journal or your planner or an index card or a note on your phone, I use Rome for this that I was talking about. I use my Rome for that. But it's helpful to have a list when you're ready for your next read, that you already kind of know what your options are and you're not going, what should I read? You already know where to go. So this year particularly, I'm keeping a book pile in my library, which is kind of we sort of turned our living room into what we call library. I'm just making a stack on my bookshelf of the ones that I want to get to. And then because we travel frequently and I utilize my Kindle a lot, I make a folder in Kindle of the current year. So I'll just put 2021, and in that folder, I'll put the books that I'd like to read. So you can also see some of my top book recommendations at the blog in my top menu. If you click on where it says favorite books, it's going to take you to my Amazon store. I'm an Amazon affiliate. Any purchase you make through there, I get a little bit of a commission. Doesn't cost you any more from it, so it really helps support the blog. So thank you in advance for doing that. If you do that, that's a huge blessing. It covers my costs here, and I'm grateful for that. But I keep adding to my book favorites, so you can check that out too. I too personally keep a personal book wish list on Amazon. That books that I come across that look of interest that I don't want to forget. Maybe I didn't add them to a list. So if I'm on the go, sometimes I might just put them in my Amazon wish list. They're there. Plus, like, my family can see that. They can see my wish list. Like my husband, so if he wants to pick me up a little gift, he kind of knows what's there. So it's a double win for me. I also, this is the other one, and I've learned, because I was a very spontaneous book purchaser. So I've learned to put a book in my wish list and wait at least a month before I get that book, to just leave it sit there to see if I even want it after that, because sometimes I don't. So that's a good thing to do, to just wait on it. Another good tip here is get reading time on a schedule. All right, because it's probably not going to happen if you are not planning for it and if you're not intentional. Schedule time in your day to read during the day, or maybe it's before bed. I like to read in the mornings right after my Bible time. I usually am going to read a Christian nonfiction book then. I like to read in the afternoon. I like to sit and take about 15 minutes with a book, and then I like to read again before bed. So those are usually my 3 times I am reading for sure, for the most part. I wanted to share, when I was putting this episode together, I wanted to share what my time looked like yesterday as I was putting this together. So I kind of started out in my Bible, in my word and prayer time, my normal quiet time. And when I was done with that, I opened my Kindle app, and I utilized my iPad to do that for that reading time. I didn't use my Kindle. My iPad's a little bigger, kind of like it. I already have it because I'm utilizing it for parts of my quiet time. I opened up Feeling and Faith by Brian Borgman. Excellent book. So I've just determined after my time in the Word that I like to read a chapter of a book that's usually a Christian nonfiction. So that's all. It doesn't always work out every day. Most days it works out. Sometimes I can read more than a chapter, depending on the time I have. And then after I was done there and I went to shower and go get ready for my day, I popped an audiobook on to listen as I got ready. And I do have a little waterproof Bluetooth speaker that I like. I can take it in the shower with me. And if I don't have an audiobook going, I'm probably listening to a podcast during that time. But yesterday I had on, it was The Green Ember. It's by S.D. Smith. They're just fun fictional stories. I just really enjoy them. I continued listening to that when I came downstairs and I was getting breakfast ready and unloaded the dishwasher. My hubby was in his office working, so I just, instead of headphones, I just set my phone and listened to it from there. Sometimes when I have my grandkiddos overnight in the mornings, we'll listen to an audiobook together in the kitchen when I'm getting breakfast ready. They'll kind of hang with me and we'll have something on. We are also slowly working to read out loud that Little House series, so that's something I look forward to them. We usually do that after breakfast when I have them here. Then later in the afternoon, when I sat to read, I did some of my reading for the Sermon on the Mount series. You know, I'm coming up, as I'm recording this, I'm working through Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart. So I've been reading through Martin Lloyd-Jones' studies in the Sermon on the Mount, and I was dabbling a little bit in Thomas Watson's commentary on the Beatitudes. That's a little tougher read for me, that one, but it's good. There's just some good stuff in there. Dinner time found me continuing on with my Green Ember series on my Audible. And then before I went to bed, I utilized Kindle, and my book that I'm currently reading in there is called Made for Each Other, Marriage as It's Meant to Be by Brian Chappell. And I don't know if I said his name right. It's Chappell. So good stuff there. I really enjoyed that. So I heard somebody say that if you can squeeze in just 15 minutes a day of reading every day, it's enough to read a chapter or more a day, and it'll keep you on track to reading 2 books a month. That's 24 books in a year. So that's a lot of books. But we talked about it's not the quantity, it's the quality too. So if you have littles at home or older kids, maybe you schedule a family reading time in the afternoon or the evenings after dinner or before dinner if there's a quiet time, just to get kids in that habit of reading on their own. So my next area we're going to talk about reading more books, simple tips, is where do we find books? So you have this list together, right, of what you'd like to read, or you're going to put it together maybe. Start first with your local library as you're looking to find books, and then check out local bookshops. And my usual default place is online, okay? Some churches have a library. Maybe your church has a library you can use. So I talked about Overdrive, which kind of connects with that Libby app. And I'm saying this, I don't understand how it all works. Y'all are probably like, she has not a clue. I really don't. I have to research that, and I will, because I want to figure that out. But the library is a great resource. Don't forget that the Gutenberg Project too is the other one. I use Amazon heavily out of convenience. I also like the wish list option, so that's kind of cool. But there's some other great places to find books. You can go to Westminster Bookstore. It's WTSbooks.com, I believe. Crossway, Moody Publishers, Ligonier, Grace to You, Shepherd Press, some great sites, Banner of Truth, Granted Ministries is a good resource. Media Gratiae has some good stuff. The Good Book Company, Desiring God. There's other good places there. There's also a site called bookshop.org where when you buy through them, instead of buying through Amazon, you can support local bookshops by buying directly through them. And it will connect you. It'll show you where your local bookstores are. I can't always find the Christian books I'm looking for on there. Sometimes I can, but not always. So if I'm not going to go through Amazon, I'm going to go through some of those others. WTS, Westminster Books, is a site I go to quite frequently to pick up books. So for solid books to read in your walk as a Christian, get some recommendations. If you're not sure where to begin, go to your pastor and your elders. Go to the older woman in your church. Maybe it's your women's ministry leader, or you have that Titus 2 mentor in your life to get some good recommendations from. Your church family, those are good places to start. You can also get solid recommendations from good, solid ministries you follow. Be a really good discerner of what you read and what you recommend. Do a little research on it. Tim Challies is a great one to do that with. That's a great site to do that. So as we're winding up here, I want to share some thoughts from Jim Elliff, and it was taken from a post he wrote called Why Read a Good Book. So he says, when buying books, to remember the following. He says, buy only the best books, since you will only read a few hundred in your lifetime. When possible, seek a recommendation first. Don't excessively fret over the price, since the cost of a book is always small if it impacts your life for good. Buy to preserve the truth for your family or some deserving friends or institution in the future, for they will inherit your library when you die. I read that, it makes me probably want to gut some. Probably need to do that. He continues, he says, never let the reading of books replace the reading of the Bible. Instead of one or the other, do both. Amen to that. He says, let a good book humble you and not make you proud by seeking God in what you read. C.S. Lewis said, that's the end of that little clip there from Jim Elliff. C.S. Lewis said, you can never get a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me. So I have a really good quote, so don't leave me yet. But I do want to encourage you to establish a reading routine. Think about when you could read, how, the apps, your library card, your reading list, the Libby account, all these different things. Having conversations with, your family over books you're reading together as a family, joining a book club, having a book club as a family. There's so many ways to incorporate reading into your life. One big one is turn off the TV. That's a big one. You'll gain more reading time instantly. So I know for you, because even for me, I want my reading to be on autopilot. I want to not have to think about it. I want it to become so ingrained in what I do that it is just a habit and it's what I do. And I want to leave with this most encouraging quote from Bob Kauflin. I love this quote. This is one I remember. He said, even if I don't read as many books as others, I read. If I'm not reading, I'm relying on my memory, which seems to be decreasing daily. So I read. I once heard someone say that books don't change people, sentences do. I love that. He continues, if I glean 2 or 3 sentences from a book that affect the way I think and the way I live, that's time well invested. Aim into that. So remember that, friend. We're not going to comprehend or remember everything we read in every book. It is just probably not humanly possible unless you have one of those photogenic memories or your memory is just really excellent. But I love that. Let me read that again. If I glean 2 or 3 sentences from a book that affect the way I think and the way I live, that's time well invested. So remember that as you're reading. So my friend, Jesus is enough always. And I am so thankful for your time today. As always, you can head over to the blog, thankfulhomemaker.com. That'll have all the main show notes. I'll put some important ones under the video for you really quick. Again, I do have an Amazon store where I share some of my favorite books that I'll link to too in the show notes below. And please share with us in the comments here on this video where your reading tips. How do you squeeze reading in? Where do you find books to read? Do you make a book list? Any other of your favorite tips, I would love that because we all benefit from that. So please share with us in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I am so grateful for you, my friend. And I do pray you have a very blessed week.